Incredible discovery, single dad CEO stumbles upon a little girl hidden in trash on Christmas Eve. Jake hurried down the icy streets, the festive glow of twinkling lights reflecting off the frosty pavement. The closer he got to home, the heavier the weight of regret pressed on his chest. It was Christmas Eve, and instead of sitting down to dinner with his daughter, he had spent an exhausting day negotiating deals for his startup. Another family tradition sacrificed at the altar of ambition. He vividly imagined Lily's disappointed face when he told her he wouldn't make it again. The thought twisted in him like a knife. As a CEO, Jake had fought tooth and nail to build a company that promised stability for Lily, a reason for those long hours to mean something. Yet, every moment he spent away felt like a trade-off against moments he could never get back. How could he chase the elusive vision of success while simultaneously nurturing the tiny heart at home? Lost in his turmoil, Jake barely noticed the low whimpers echoing from a shadowy alley. Intrigued yet wary, he paced towards the sound. There, tucked beneath discarded boxes, he discovered a shivering 5-year-old girl, dirt streaked across her cheeks, eyes wide with fear. A lump formed in his throat. Should he risk his safety and career to help her? He had fought hard for a future for Lily and now found himself confronted with the deep injustices lurking beneath the surface of holiday cheer. Before he could reason himself away, his heart surged with empathy. This child was alone, possibly abandoned, and the thought pierced through Jake's carefully constructed facade. He wasn't sure how the dangers of the city would weigh against his responsibility as a father when another child needed help. Moments passed in a blur, filled with memories of late nights spent worrying about utilities and the absence of family to lean on in Chicago's overwhelming expanse. Should he extend a hand, or prioritize the safety of the daughter who relied on him? As he knelt to offer comforting words, the piercing fear in Emma's eyes echoed in his mind, forcing a confrontation with the guilt he felt about being a less-than-perfect dad to Lily. The city was swirling around him, lights sparkling in stark contrast to the grim reality unfolding in the alley. A decision loomed, one that could pull him away from his plans. But how could he justify leaving Emma to fend for herself when she reminded him so much of his own struggles? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. His mind raced. Was he prepared to face the backlash from colleagues, friends, and those who might view his decision as reckless? The pressure was mounting, not only for the future of his company but for the future of Lily and now Emma, too. Torn between ambitions that shaped his identity and the human connection that pulled at his soul, he felt as if he were teetering on the edge of a precipice. Just as he began to reveal details about himself to Emma, a notification pinged on his phone, an urgent email about a major corporate decision that could either make or break his company. Anxiety surged through him, twisting and pulling at his insides. The air grew thick, heavy with consequences, every possibility stretched before him, yet his heart remained anchored to the 2 children now intertwined in his fate. He could either seize his ambition or delve into a struggle far beyond himself. The choice was his, and time was running out. Jake's hand trembled slightly as he stared at the screen, parsing through the email's contents while feeling the shadows of uncertainty creeping in. Should he abandon this child, vulnerable and afraid, to chase after another deal that might secure his company's future? Or should he step away from the bright lights of ambition and embrace the raw, demanding reality of human connection? Emma's wide eyes flickered up at him, deep pools of worry revealing the fears that lurked beneath her dirt-smudged exterior. In that moment, Jake realized the decision unfurling before him wasn't merely about professional success, it was about defining who he was. Was he a father focused solely on climbing the corporate ladder, or was there a deeper calling within him to nurture and protect not just his own daughter but also those who needed him? "Hey, are you okay?" Jake murmured, forcing his mind to focus on the girl in front of him. Her shivers seemed to synchronize with the tremors of his discomfort. The chirpy emails, the brisk office meetings, all paled against the urgency in her pleading gaze. A little cold and hungry, came her small voice, barely audible over the bustling noise of the street outside. He was torn, the earlier visions of boardroom battles and profit margins colliding fiercely with the stark realness of this child's plight. Jake took a deep breath, pulling up fragments of his past, his own moments of vulnerability that had shaped him. He had always been the one to deny help, refusing the support that could have offered solace. But here he was presented with a chance, however messy it might be, to be the support for someone else. "Hold on," he whispered, his mind racing through possibilities. What would happen at work if he stepped away? The thought gripped him with fear but mingled with the awakenings of a newfound determination. He could make the call, or rather, he had to. Pulling up the email one last time, he quickly jotted down a response. He would delegate the immediate decisions to someone he trusted, allowing them to run with the momentum he had created. It felt reckless, but sometimes sacrifice was about stepping back to move forward. He clicked send, and the moment he did, something inside him shifted. Jake turned to Emma, noting her shivering frame wrapped tightly in the remnants of her rags. "Let us get you somewhere warm. You can tell me what happened." "Okay," her voice rose slightly, igniting a flicker of hope in the dimness of the alley. As he gathered her small hand in his, a rush of determination surged through him. This wasn't merely a detour, but perhaps a discovery of a purpose he hadn't even known he was missing. As they stepped out into the cold, the high-rises of the city around them stood stark and imposing, yet now they felt like markers of a new path. Jake began to envision a life where he balanced being a responsible CEO and a present father, where comfort and nurturing would intersect with ambition in ways he hadn't considered before. Each step felt heavier yet lighter at the same time. Emma's trust was a weight he was honored to carry. Yet, the nagging concern loomed: how would work react to his decision? What would it cost him in the realm of corporate power? Just as they reached the warmth of a nearby cafe, Jake's phone buzzed again. Panic washed over him as he glanced at the screen, the last thing he expected. A message from his co-founder about the board meeting, the one he had failed to attend. It read like an accusation, fueling his anxiety about the tensions to come. As he gripped the door handle to the cafe, questions pressed upon him. Could he genuinely balance his corporate aspirations with this newfound responsibility? And what lay ahead now that he had chosen to put his career on the line for Emma? The moment of truth loomed closer than ever. The door swung open with a low creak, and the warm aroma of coffee enveloped Jake and Emma almost immediately. A flicker of comfort ignited briefly within him, yet a sense of impending dread shadowed that warmth. He ushered Emma inside, her small frame still tense from the chill of the evening, and led her to a small table tucked in the corner of the cafe. The clatter of dishes filled the air, punctuated by quiet conversations as patrons absorbed the cozy atmosphere. Jake flicked his eyes to his phone, anxiety pooling in his stomach as the message from his co-founder loomed like a storm cloud overhead. They needed him, and he had let them down. The facade of control he had so carefully constructed began to fray at the edges. "Do you like hot chocolate?" he asked Emma, trying to divert his thoughts and focus on her comfort. She nodded eagerly, her eyes brightening for a moment as if he'd promised her a treasure. The sight stirred something within him, a fierce protective instinct blended with burgeoning paternal affection. "All right, let us get that for you," Jake said, rising from the table. But as he approached the counter, a cascade of guilt surged through him. The moment in the alley stung his conscience. The decision had been made, but at what cost? Could he go back to his old life, where numbers and profits reigned supreme? Or had he crossed a threshold of human connection that would forever shift the foundation of his identity? An upbeat barista flashed him a smile as he ordered 2 cups, and Jake forced himself to return the gesture. Beneath that tight-lipped smile, he felt an undercurrent of doubt. Questions swirled unchecked in his mind. What if his colleagues perceived his absence as weakness? The business world had little patience for vulnerability, but this was different. He wasn't just a CEO at this moment, he was a protector, thrust into a role he had never anticipated. As he returned to their table, Emma's eyes sparkled when the steaming cups were placed before her. Her fingers wrapped around the ceramic, both warming her hands and offering an anchor against the daunting weight Jake felt. He settled across from her, brewing a storm of thoughts. She was a reminder of tenderness amidst his relentless pursuit of success, a juxtaposition that tugged at the very fabric of his ambitions. "So, what happened?" he asked gently, sensing that diving into her story might provide the connection he both sought and feared. With a timid exhale, Emma began detailing her tale of being lost, of searching for a home, her words tumbling out as instinctively as the steam rose from the cup. Jake listened intently, swept away by her narrative. As she spoke of a difficult life that seemed so far removed from his own, he saw parts of himself reflected in her story: the yearning for family, for belonging, and for moments of kindness amidst chaos. "Why did you help me?" she asked, her round cheeks still flushed from the cold, yet her gaze pierced through the cafe. The innocence of her question cut through the noise like a knife. Jake hesitated, wrestling with his own motivations. How could he explain that he had stumbled upon a personal revelation as much as he had helped her? "Because everyone deserves someone to care," he finally responded, and even as the words left his mouth, he realized how true they rang. The two shared a moment in unspoken agreement, made in the understanding that life was often unpredictable, peppered with sacrifices for the greater good. But as something akin to hope began to bloom within him, the nagging thought returned. What awaited him back in the boardroom? How would he confront the mounting doubts pressed upon him from colleagues who might mistake this for a temporary distraction rather than a vital awakening? Just then, his phone buzzed again, cutting through the intimacy of the moment. A group message appeared, insistent and unyielding: "We need to meet. Urgent decisions require your input." Jake felt the color drain from his face as he read those words, a wave of uncertainty crashing over the fragile resolve he had only just begun to build. The time had come for him to face the reality of what he had chosen. Would they understand his absence? Could he convey to them the gravity of a different mission, one that wasn't just tied to profits and deals? He looked across the table at Emma, who was blissfully sipping her hot chocolate, unaware of the turmoil unfolding just a few feet away in the corporate sphere. The dichotomy of their worlds coalesced in that moment: a child clinging to hope and a businessman tethered to expectations. As Jake's pulse quickened, he knew that whatever happened next would force him to confront not just his career but the man he wanted to become. Facing two pivotal worlds, he wrestled with a decision that could redefine not only his career but his very existence. Would he forge ahead with his corporate obligations, or would he embrace the unfolding role of a protector? The moment of truth was no longer a distant one, it loomed before him, an ultimatum waiting to be addressed. Jake's heart thudded in his chest as he felt the immense pressure of expectations close in. He had built his life around the idea of success defined by numbers, profits, and endless meetings. But now, sitting across from Emma, he realized that success extended far beyond a balance sheet. It involved connection, responsibility, and perhaps, most compellingly, rediscovery of parts of himself long buried beneath boardroom jargon and the relentless grind of corporate ambition. He took a deep breath, the warm scent of coffee mixed with cinnamon drifting lazily around them. As the barista buzzed energetically behind the counter, the noise of the cafe faded into a mere backdrop. Jake was present, focusing intently on the girl before him. Emma's small hands cradled her hot chocolate, the steam rising tenderly into the air, and Jake felt a sly smile tug at his lips despite the turmoil inside. This child was an anchor in the chaos, a silent reminder of purity amid all the wreckage that life threw at them. "What are you going to do now?" Emma asked, her voice a whisper, bringing him back to the present. Jake faced her earnest gaze, deeply conscious that her question resonated with his own internal conflict. Should he return to that stark, sterile boardroom and abandon the warmth forming in this tiny cafe? It struck him that he was not merely her protector in this moment but was becoming a version of himself that he had nearly forgotten, a version guided by compassion and moral integrity. As he contemplated the future, flashes of his routine life surged through his mind: calls with investors, heated discussions with his co-founder, nights spent poring over spreadsheets. It was a life that had rewarded him with achievements yet left him feeling hollow. Now, in stark contrast, he was confronted with feelings of doubt that he had long suppressed. Had his focus on success stifled his humanity? "We can get through this together, right?" he said softly, a question that emerged as much for himself as for Emma. A flicker of surprise crossed her face, but it was quickly replaced by a nod, her trust evident even in that tiny action. Her response ignited something inside him. For the first time in years, he felt genuinely motivated, not by the relentless pursuit of accolades, but by the desire to make a real difference in someone else's life. Would they understand? The notion echoed in the corners of his mind. Would the team that had relied on him for direction perceive this moment as just a fleeting lapse in judgment? Or, better yet, would they see it as an opportunity for growth, a call for a new vision, one inclusive of empathy and purpose? "I have to be honest with you, Emma," he murmured, leaning forward. "Things might change for me soon." He wasn't entirely sure what that would mean, but he knew it wouldn't involve backing down from this newfound commitment. This wasn't just a personal mission, it demanded a transformation in how he viewed leadership and connection. I think I want to be someone better. The conviction in his voice surprised him, like a revelation emerging from the depths of uncertainty. Emma beamed, and in that smile, he gleaned a sense of responsibility that felt both daunting and exhilarating. The critical meeting with his team was looming, but perhaps it was an opportunity to reshape perceptions, to share his journey of connection rather than merely a recap of profits and losses. But just then, the message from his co-founder reappeared in his mind, weighing like an anchor. The urgency, the insistence, what awaited him at the office? The pull of loyalty to his colleagues was strong, yet obstructed by the burgeoning realization of what he stood to lose if he dismissed this transformation. "Do you think we can find a home for you, Emma?" he asked, not knowing how profoundly that question would resonate with him. It was a promise that extended beyond mere words. As she pondered his question, her gaze drifting away, Jake felt the clarity of purpose igniting deep within his core. He not only wanted to help her, he felt compelled to do so. And he was beginning to understand that this journey was more than just about a little girl, it was a pathway leading him back to himself. Suddenly, his phone buzzed again, shattering the moment. Another message from his co-founder, more frantic now. "Jake, we're waiting. We need you here." Panic flared. Tension gripped him as he faced the choice before him once more. Would he rush back to the faceless world of corporate demands, or was he ready to embrace a new sense of purpose, one grounded in authenticity and connection? As he settled his eyes back on Emma, her expression of innocent hope flooded him with a sense of resolve. He would have to decide quickly, for the moment of truth edged closer with every heartbeat. What was he willing to sacrifice to truly live out this commitment? Would he stand firm, or retreat back into the familiar comforts of his former life? The answer loomed before him, demanding clarity and courage. Jake's mind raced as he weighed his options. The prospect of returning to the corporate world felt suffocating, yet the responsibilities he carried for his team loomed heavily. He was torn between the two realities, each vying for dominance in his life. Emma's trust surged inside him like an undercurrent, begging him to take a step forward. "Give me a minute," he murmured, excusing himself momentarily to the patio outside the cafe. The cool air hit his face, invigorating him amid the chaos inside his head. He needed to be honest with himself. What had compelled him to chase numbers and accolades? Was it the fear of inadequacy? A desire for validation? He closed his eyes and drew in a deep breath, feeling the chilly breeze swirl around him. Memories of late nights and missed family dinners flashed through his mind, the essential moments sacrificed for profit margins and reports. On some level, he had convinced himself that the success would bring happiness to those around him, that they would benefit from his relentless drive. But this new awareness, encouraged by a child, suggested otherwise. Jake opened his eyes to gaze at the flickering strings of lights adorning the cafe's entrance. Everything felt different. It was as if the world had shifted slightly off its axis, inviting a profound introspection. This wasn't just about Emma or his corporate commitments. This was about redefining his purpose. He returned to their table, where Emma was now tracing patterns in the foam atop her drink. "I'm going to need your help," he said, the words coming out more naturally than he expected. Emma's gaze flicked up, curious. "I need to figure out how to help you find a home and still feel right about what I'm doing at work. Can you do that?" Her enthusiastic nod made him smile, and it felt as though he had made a pact, a commitment to rediscovery that extended beyond her needs. This child had unwittingly opened the door to a more profound reconciliation with himself. The seconds began to tick away in his mind, reminding him of the reality awaiting him at the office. He was running out of time. As he deliberated, sensations of frustration and anticipation melded into a cocktail of urgency within him. He could remain stagnant or leap into the unknown, a decision that would echo far beyond this moment. "Let us make a list," he proposed, settling into the role of a collaborator. "What does a good home look like for you? What would make you feel safe?" Her eyes sparkled as she started to explain, illuminating the steps she had not even realized she'd been contemplating. With each response, Jake felt a renewed sense of momentum, as though he was not alone in this endeavor. Simultaneously, thoughts about his co-founder's texts nagged at him like an incessant itch. Could he afford the risk of stepping back and potentially losing everything he'd worked for? But as Emma envisioned her home through small details, a garden, bright colors, laughter, Jake felt a steady flame ignite within him. He realized he had an opportunity to shift his leadership style, to incorporate genuine compassion that transcended profits. "Okay, let us take this back to the office," he said, the urgency in his voice peaking again. "We're going to create a plan to help kids like you." Emma's eyes widened, and he watched her warmth and enthusiasm breathe new life into his mission. Suddenly, the balance between dedication to his work and commitment to caretaking for others didn't feel like a burden but a calling. As they wrapped up their conversation, Jake reached for his phone, ready to respond to his co-founder. But what message would he send? His heart raced at the significance of this next step. Would he declare his intent to lead with empathy and responsibility, prioritizing the human connection over mere profit? Would he risk facing backlash from those who had always measured success by spreadsheets? The words formed in his mind, but they struggled to find shape on the screen. As Jake breathed in deeply, preparing to type, he suddenly recognized the truth: this was more than a professional dilemma. It was a chance to redefine who he was, not only as a CEO but as a person determined to forge genuine human connections. His finger hovered over the screen, poised for revelation. Would he embrace this shift, or let the fears of the past pull him back into familiar territory? With a final glance at Emma, whose small smile had become a beacon of hope, Jake positioned himself at the edge of a significant decision. The moment had come, and the stakes felt impossibly high. What awaited him at the office could change everything, not just for him, but for those he had once thoughtlessly overlooked. Would he be ready to face his own fear, to confront the kind of leader he wanted to be? As he began to type, a new message hovered in his mind, demanding clarity and sincerity. "I need to say something important." Jake took a deep breath, his mind racing as he weighed the magnitude of what lay ahead. A subtle determination began to solidify within him, but doubt also loomed, a creeping fear that found its way into the corners of his thoughts. Was he really ready to shake the foundations of what had always been his identity? He couldn't ignore the wall of anxiety that stood before him. His thumb pressed into the screen and he typed, "I need to say something important." Each character felt like a declaration. He paused, his heart racing, contemplating the ramifications of this commitment to himself and to Emma. Did he have the courage to step away from the conventional metrics of success that had been ingrained in him? Jake's notion of leadership had revolved around hard figures and corporate wins, but he was beginning to grasp that true leadership might rest on something far more intangible: the power of connection, the value of caring. With Emma's innocent trust still illuminating his path, he hit send, the vector of his decision now launched into the digital ether. Almost immediately, the reply came through, terse and impatient, "Make it quick. I'm busy." Jake's chest tightened. The impatience stung, a stark contrast to the earnest conversation he'd just engaged in. The dichotomy of ambitions faced him like a wall: the urgency of profit-driven goals versus the more profound, albeit uncertain, task of rebuilding relationships and purpose. As he ventured back into the bustling cafe, energized yet hesitant, Jake felt the remnants of his resolve flicker. Each step toward his seat became a march towards confrontation, not just with his co-founder, but with himself. How could he lead a team when he felt stuck at the intersection of ideals? Emma had already begun imagining her perfect home, a place of warmth and safety. The details filled her face with a hope that radiated like sunlight, yet Jake was stuck before an impending storm at work. He plopped back into his chair, and Emma's excited talk swirled around him like a comforting lullaby, momentarily grounding him amid the chaos. Jake realized he had an opportunity. Instead of steering conversations strictly toward metrics as he usually did, he could embrace this new challenge. The thoughts about fostering a kinder workplace played in his mind like a potential symphony, one where empathy, connection, and responsibility resonated within his team. What if those weren't just mere words, but a strategy that could reframe success itself? What if we create our own guiding principles? He asked Emma, curiosity lacing his tone. What should our plan include to help kids like you? Emma's eyes sparkled with a brightness that fueled his ambition. He could feel her energy meld with his, a team committed to a greater cause. As they spoke, ideas began to flow: fundraising events, workshops, community outreach, crafting a mission that could bridge the corporate realm with the spirit of care. Yet as her enthusiastic suggestions blossomed, Jake couldn't fully shake the worry gnawing at him. While he envisioned the smiles of children reached by their initiative, the specter of judgment from the board loomed large. Would the others see this as frivolous? The conflict of prioritizing the human element over quarterly profits presented an enticing but daunting challenge. Emma's delighted chatter brought a smile back to his face, inspiring him to think outside the box. She was awakening a dormant side of him, the part that noticed the nuance in people's needs, the part that could lead with compassion rather than fear. "Let us get your ideas down on paper," he said, a flash of determination sparking within him. As they sketched out plans, Jake felt himself stepping toward change. The more Emma shared, the clearer it became he had a chance to redefine his narrative, to transcend the expectation of a cold, calculating CEO. But doubt lurked still, whispering of upcoming board meetings that were sure to challenge his newfound resolve. Just as he poured himself into their conversation, Jake's phone buzzed, illuminating the new message from his co-founder. "You'd better have a great reason for this pivot. We can't afford distractions." It was a challenge directly related to his path of discovery. Maintaining clarity under pressure would test his newfound resolve, and the moment had come for alignment of purpose and action. "Now or never," he muttered, an internal rallying cry spurring him on. He glanced back at Emma, the embodiment of hope curled up in her seat, and knew he had to push past this uncertainty, not just for himself, but for her as well. His fingers danced across the screen as he started to craft a response, knowing it wouldn't just reshape a conversation, it would demand a transformation from him. Could he convince his team to embrace a different vision altogether with the tenacity necessary? As he communicated the pivot, now laced with passion and clarity, he paused, holding his breath for what would follow this critical message. The moment to influence change had arrived, but there was still the matter of opposition. How would his co-founder react? This might be the decisive moment he had been anticipating, one that could redefine not just his career but his very essence as a leader. Would he emerge victorious, or would he face isolation in doing something radically different? Jake pressed send, the narrative of his life poised to shift dramatically. The screen went dark, but Jake's mind hummed with the echoes of his message. The reply was inevitable, confrontational, perhaps dismissive. Yet, amidst the clamor of doubts, a newfound clarity began to reveal itself. What if this was the moment he stepped into a version of himself that he had long hidden beneath layers of corporate armor? He let out a slow breath, reminding himself that transformation frequently arrived on the back of discomfort. The cafe buzzed around him, each laugh and clink of coffee cups underscoring the impending decision. It wasn't just about the message sent, it was about the change he sought to ignite. The very foundation of his leadership style could flip from numbers to nurturing. What if he prioritized the human touch, coaxing a shift in corporate culture towards something more relational? Jake pulled out a notebook, flipping to a blank page. He began to jot down thoughts returning to the ideas Emma had inspired. Maybe these weren't mere brainstorms but the scaffolding for a new culture within his company. Empathy was the first word he wrote, followed by connection and accountability. His pen flew across the paper as each word began to symbolize a foundation he was ready to lay. But shadows of worry crept in, mingling with his resolve. What if the board dismissed these ideas outright? Yes, his co-founder's response loomed, but deeper fears bubbled just beneath the surface, fears of ridicule, of being the odd one trying to steer the ship in uncharted waters. He could almost hear their voices, those of longtime allies now potential adversaries. As he splashed more ideas onto the page, something twisted in his gut. What if he was setting himself up for failure? He pictured the board meeting their hard stares and crossed arms, the authoritative voices asking why they should deviate from their successful path. It would be so easy to retreat back to the person he had always been, the one who thrived on cold hard figures and promotions. The door swung open, a brisk autumn breeze swirling through the cafe, and in walked his co-founder, Mark. Jake's heart raced, a primal instinct invading his thoughts. What did he know? Did he sense the shift about to happen? Did he view Jake with respect, or as an obstacle in his way? "Let us talk," Mark called, striding towards him, eyebrows knit together. The weight of expectation hung heavily in the air. Taking a deep breath, Jake stood to meet him, reminding himself that this wasn't just for him anymore, it was for Emma, for all the children they could help if he could just communicate his vision effectively. Standing face to face with Mark, Jake felt the pressure build. "I sent you a message about a pivot I think we need to explore," he began, his voice steadied by inner resolve. This could change how we connect with our clients and how we empower our team. Mark frowned, skepticism etched on his face as he folded his arms. Empowering our team? Or are we talking distractions from our bottom line? Jake braced himself. This was the moment, the point of no return. Each retort from Mark would either erode or reinforce the walls Jake hoped to break down. They're not distractions, Jake countered, feeling an impulse to stand firm. They're the future. What we're building isn't just a brand but a community. If we focus on this, our profits will follow. He could see the flicker of surprise in Mark's eyes, an inkling of curiosity perhaps mixed with irritation. Jake knew he needed to rein in his swinging confidence. He had to assert, not alienate. Let us offer something different, he pressed. Let us redefine what success looks like. If we build a foundation based on care, we might just unlock potential we never knew existed. Mark's eyebrows raised slightly, as though assessing the credibility of Jake's claims. Jake pressed on, galvanizing his thoughts into arguments that resonated with the essence of what he wanted to achieve. As their conversation unfolded, the cafe noise faded into the background. Each point Jake articulated felt like a step deeper into the unknown, an excavation of both fear and hope. But could he navigate this tension, this push and pull, without it fracturing their partnership? And just as he sensed a breakthrough, Mark interjected, his tone shifting. You've given me some thoughts to consider, Jake. But ultimately, it's not just about what you and I think. The board will need convincing. Jake felt a chill, anticipation colliding with uncertainty. The journey was far from over, and he felt the pressure mount as the stakes became frighteningly clear. Yet, behind the uncertainty, he felt a ripple of excitement. If they could engage the board meaningfully, this could be the beginning of something transformative. The moment stalled, suspended in the space between their contrasting visions, and Jake realized this was only the preamble to their larger confrontation. Would they proceed towards a shared ambition, or would the voices of the past impose limits on their future? With determination swirling within him, Jake leaned in closer, ready to face the tides of opposition with fervor. What awaited him in the meeting with the board would determine not just his fate but the legacy he wished to build. How do we tell them a story worth listening to? Jake asked, a fire igniting within him. And as Mark appeared to consider this, Jake's heart raced at the thought of what was still to come, an imminent showdown that could redefine everything. Would he find a way to turn hesitation into harmony, or would he be left fighting a battle alone? The meeting room felt stifling as Jake sat in the polished chair across from Mark, the board members flanking them like silent sentinels. The air was thick with anticipation, a palpable tension that he could almost taste. Jake's hands trembled slightly, a stark contrast to the calculated demeanor he had always projected in these settings. Mark leaned forward, clearing his throat as he began the introduction. Today, we want to discuss potential pivot strategies to enhance our corporate culture. Jake has some unique insights he believes could prove valuable. Jake's heart raced. Mark was acknowledging him. This was it. The moment he had been waiting for, a chance to share the vision he had so fervently sketched in his notebook. Taking a deep breath, he stood up, the weight of his message pressing down on him. Thank you, Mark. Everyone, I appreciate you giving me this opportunity, he began, his voice steady yet laced with urgency. What I'm proposing goes beyond numbers and metrics. It's about creating something that resonates deeply with our clients and our team members. He opened his notebook, the page blank except for his earlier scrawls, the foundations of his emerging culture. We need to prioritize empathy, connection, and accountability. These aren't just buzzwords, they are the cornerstones of a workplace where people feel valued not just as employees, but as contributors to a shared mission. Jake's gaze swept across the board, searching for acknowledgement but finding mostly expressions of skepticism. Isn't this a bit idealistic? One board member challenged, arching an eyebrow. This sounds great in theory, but how will it impact our bottom line? Jake felt the heat rise in his chest, a mix of frustration and determination. Great companies aren't built on profit margins alone, he explained, his voice gaining strength. They're built on cultures that empower people to thrive. When employees feel connected to their work and their colleagues, productivity skyrockets. The community we create transforms into a living, breathing entity that attracts clients. He heard murmurs around the table, some intrigued, others dismissive. Mark watched closely, his expression inscrutable. Jake pressed on, recounting stories he had witnessed, the moments when teams had rallied in support of one another, delivering results far exceeding their expectations. But each success story he shared was met with counter-arguments steeped in cold pragmatism. "Show us the numbers," another board member interjected sharply, glancing at the spreadsheets that cluttered the table. Each rebuttal ignited a flicker of self-doubt in Jake, but deep down, a flame flickered, a belief that this was not merely about financial forecasting but about authentic transformation. Jake could feel himself at a crossroads, teetering on the edge of a decision. Would he succumb to the familiar pressures of pragmatic corporate culture, or could he push back against the current to carve a path toward the future he envisioned? As he considered the next step, he recalled Emma's laughter, the innocent joy encapsulated in her experiences of kindness. It seemed vital now, more than ever, to illustrate what empathy could weave into the fabric of their company. What if we see our team not merely as resources but as partners in innovation? What if our leadership reflects their needs and aspirations? Mark interjected, reminding the board of his earlier caution. "These are noble ideals, Jake, but we need a solid strategy. Theory without execution is futile. Your vision needs a plan." Jake leaned back, a moment of reflection washing over him. Their exchange was a dance of resistance and resolve, a testing ground for his nascent leadership. He pivoted, presenting a working framework that could guide their initiative, surreptitiously woven with metrics to appease the board yet grounded in the heart of his mission. But as he laid out the strategy, he felt the ground shift beneath him. Even with a plan in place, he sensed the looming shadows of dissent still there, lurking. The battle lines had been drawn, and he was in the eye of the storm he had inadvertently stirred. "Tell me," Jake said, drawing courage from the tension in the room. "What will it take to change this narrative? How do we make stories worth listening to resonate with you?" His question hung in the air, a gauntlet thrown down. Jake knew he had opened Pandora's box, and the unfolding dialogue would be pivotal in carving out his path forward. The board remained silent, their expressions unreadable, but the atmosphere brimmed with potential. What awaited Jake was not just the fate of his ideas but the challenge of building bridges where walls had long stood firm. As silence loomed, he realized that the real challenge was yet to come. How close would they come to considering his vision, and what would that mean for his future? The moment stretched thin, and he braced for impact. Would they engage in his call for transformation, or further entrench their status quo? Jake's question echoed in the stillness, drawing the board's gaze but eliciting no immediate response. He felt exposed, as if he were standing naked in front of an audience that expected him to impress, while secrets of vulnerability lay buried beneath his poised exterior. A bead of perspiration traced down his temple, and anxiety gnawed at the edges of his resolve. Instead of retreating, however, he chose this moment to dig deeper into his own conviction. He wanted to bridge the gap, to transform the ambient disbelief into collaboration. This boardroom, often filled with sterile discussions about profits and losses, could become a crucible for change. Yet, a nagging question whispered in the corners of his mind: could he summon the courage to lead with authenticity amidst skepticism? After an eternity, the silence was interrupted by Jessica, a senior board member with experience in corporate restructuring. Her voice, resonant yet calculated, pierced through the thick air. "It sounds like you're suggesting we pivot the entire strategy of the company based on sentiment rather than sound fiscal policy. That's a risky move, Jake." Her challenge struck close to home. The doubt that had flickered to life in his chest flared. But he leaned into the discomfort, recalling the moments of meaningful human connections in his own life, the profound power of empathy. "What if," he ventured carefully, "we see this as an investment, not a cost? We're not just rewriting a mission statement, we're reimagining long-term sustainability." Mark, sensing the shift in momentum, leaned forward, his expression inquisitive. "You're saying you believe that building a culture centered around empathy will ultimately generate better outcomes for the company? That's a tall order." Jake nodded, summoning the anecdotes he had brushed off earlier, the passionate stories of teams he had witnessed transform under the banner of connection. He felt a growing sense of urgency to convey the professionalism embedded within his vision. "It's not merely aspirational. Look at organizations with high engagement scores. The statistics validate what I'm saying. Those organizations outperform their competition in the long run. Isn't that what we ultimately seek? An unseen pressure rested heavier upon him as varying expressions flitted across the board, disbelief mingled with consideration. The tension felt electric, and amidst this maelstrom, a flicker of clarity unfurled inside Jake. He had to personalize his approach, to enter the hearts of those seated around him. Imagine, for a moment, Jake continued, his voice dropping to a near conspiratorial whisper. Imagine if every employee in this company felt recognized, celebrated for their contributions. Think of the ripple effects. Increased retention, creativity, and ultimately, extraordinary outcomes. Wouldn't we want to be the kind of company others aspire to emulate? The board was assessing him now, sizing up the credibility of his vision against years of ingrained practices. Each face reflected a different measure of skepticism, yet a shift was happening. Jake could feel it. Empathy was still categorized as soft, yet his relentless pursuit of a metrics-driven plea rooted in human connection was sparking curiosity. As the conversation unfolded into a realm of probing questions, his heart quickened. Each question posed by the board felt like a layer of the shell he was encased in, cracking ever so slightly, an opportunity to emerge bolder, refined by the friction of these discussions. Would he falter, or could he transform criticism into coaching? Tension built as Jake navigated this intricate web of skepticism and affirmation. He noticed subtle nods, fleeting glances of acknowledgement that whispered unvoiced possibilities. Was this merely a fleeting rebellion against the status quo? Or had he truly ignited something deeper within his colleagues? Jake caught a ray of potential in Marquez's gaze, a hint of acceptance sparking in the midst of continued rigor. But lingering beneath the surface was an unspoken question: was he truly ready to lead a team towards this brave new vision, or was this fearless pursuit risking everything he had worked to build? With the dialogue ramping up, he felt the weight of a critical moment closing in, the decision to either fight for his position or allow fear to dictate the trajectory of his bold ambitions. As he weighed his options, the room pulsed with the hesitant energy of transformation, and he knew that the battle for change was only just beginning. Jake stood at the confluence of possibility and fear, aware that the next words he said could sway the tide irrevocably. He took a deep breath, preparing to stake his claim. Would this herald the dawn of a new era for him and the company, or would it mark the moment he crumbled under the weight of resistance? The meeting room reflected a blend of anticipation and skepticism as Jake stood at the head of the table, peering into the eyes of those who had previously set the parameters of his success. The stakes were higher than ever. The moments he'd spent nurturing Emma's trust resonated within him, fueling his determination to reshape not just his company but also his sense of self. He felt layers of his old professional persona, defined by cold metrics and corporate speak, peeling away. This was uncharted territory, one he'd never expected to traverse. "Thank you all for hearing me out today," he began, his voice steady despite the low hum of chatter delicately washing over the boardroom. "Let us revisit the conversation around our mission, not only as it relates to our bottom line but to the people who drive our success. I propose we take a closer look not just at what we do, but how we do it." The board's expression reflected a mixture of doubt and curiosity. They needed more than aspirational language, they were grounded in tangible results and outcomes. As he embarked on this pivotal moment, he saw flashes of opportunity amidst their skepticism. "We can redefine success metrics to include employee engagement and retention, two major indicators of long-term sustainability. Imagine a company culture that not only drives performance but creates a workplace where trust flourishes." Feeling the weight of the moment, he scanned the faces around the table, noticing nods from the more seasoned members, indicators that they were open to considering his perspective. Yet, as doubts lingered in the air, he pressed on. "For instance, let us talk about implementing mentorship programs, community engagement, and employee care initiatives. These investments can transform our emotional intelligence as a workforce, translating directly into high performance, delivering returns that far exceed the traditional focus." A tangible energy filled the room while Jake's passion spilled over. It was a new kind of confidence ignited not only by numbers but by a resonance deeper than metrics, by empathy, compassion, and human connection. He recalled Emma sipping hot chocolate, speaking with hope, and his own commitment to see her thrive. It had awakened something in him that had long been dormant. Besides, he added, embodying a clarity that he hadn't felt in ages, isn't it more gratifying to be part of a company that embodies values greater than profits? A place where we can feel genuine pride in our work because we are building connections, not just transactions? This struck a chord. The senior board member who had initially challenged him leaned back, seeming to reconsider his viewpoint. As discussions flourished, Jake felt a thread of solidarity weaving through the room. People were leaning in, and for the first time, he could perceive the gears of change beginning to turn, yet doubt still danced at the edges of his thoughts. Mark's earlier wariness and the traditional metrics of success spoke louder than ideals. Would the board ultimately view Jake's vision as naivety or wisdom? Would they hold his words against him if uncertain results followed? Recognition of the risks ahead tugged at him. But more than fear, hope propelled him, the ambition to lead people where he believed they could go beckon him forward. Let us look at some successful companies, he suggested, shifting his approach. Organizations that have transformed their bottom line by investing in their workforce. They create an environment that allows talent to thrive. This won't just be about compliance or performance reviews, we'll establish a culture that celebrates achievements and nurtures aspirations. The shift in dynamics was palpable. Small murmurs of agreement meandered through the room. He heard the inflections of their voices, a faint but real sense of possibility sprouting within. Let us set specific timelines to evaluate our initiatives, Jake proposed, now leaning into a strategy that wouldn't compromise their safety net but rather expand their horizons. We can pilot these programs within departments and measure outcomes in terms of engagement and productivity. Then we can refine our approach based on real data. This isn't just about feeling good, it's about measurable change. As the meeting drew to an end, Jake felt the trajectory of his transformation solidifying. Although uncertainty would always exist, this moment marked a critical pivot in his career, one that intertwined his role as a CEO with his evolving identity as a compassionate leader. They had moved beyond discussion, inching toward implementation where strategy met heartfelt commitment. With a new sense of resolve, Jake rolled back his sleeves and beamed. Let us make it happen. He turned to Emma, who represented not only the innocence he wanted to protect but also the essence he could harness for his company as soul. He recognized that through each sacrifice made in personal life to reconnect with his values, he had actually positioned himself to fully embrace this corporate shift, imbued with a purpose far greater than profits alone. Weeks later, Jake stood in his newly implemented employee workshop, excitement rippling through the vibrant community of interactions blooming around him. Team members were sharing ideas, uplifting one another, achieving milestones that previously felt unattainable. The culture had shifted from one of competition to collaboration, something he dared to envision. Employees were engaged, inspired, and the metrics showed soaring productivity. Validation poured in over time as even the board began acknowledging the impact of this transformation. Recognition of achievements became customary. They were not merely entwined in figures but in personal stories of growth and development. As Jake watched his employees thrive and grow together, all intertwined in a mission fueled by compassion, he recognized that he had also reclaimed his purpose. Looking out over the collective joy surrounding him, Jake felt an undeniable sense of fulfillment wash over him. It was pure and earned. He had crossed the divide from self-doubt to self-assurance, proving that it was possible to be both ambitious and empathetic. Now, he stood resolutely proud, a CEO who had rewoven the tapestry of ambition with threads of humanity, a true transformation that would guide him relentlessly onward. This was the beginning of a new legacy. If you resonate with this incredible story of personal transformation and want to be inspired by more, you need to subscribe now. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with your friends. Click that like button right now to support our mission. While you're at it, leave your thoughts in the comments below and join the movement of individuals committed to personal growth.